Good evening, everybody. I hope you can hear me all right. This is a webinar, Learning Online, Exploring the Power of Webinars, and my name is Michael Hallissy. We're using a product this evening called GoToMeeting, and unfortunately one of the disadvantages with this product, which I'll talk about later, is that we don't have emoticons. They have another product called GoToWebinar where they do have the emoticons. So there's a text box or a chat box down in the bottom right hand corner of your screen, and if you're hearing me there, Mary and Nora Ann, you might just text in that you can hear me there, please. That's great. And I know, Mary, you have a mic, and we chatted already. Yeah, that's great, Mary. Thanks a million. So you're both very welcome. I am sure that we might have a couple of more joining us as well, but this is going to be recorded also. To those who are coming in to listen to it after the fact, you're all very welcome as well. Just trying to get my bearings here before I start. So I suppose just so you're aware of what I'm hoping that we're going to cover this evening in this webinar. The first one is, what is a web-based seminar or webinar? Just to be clear on what we mean by it. Excuse me, how we might use webinars in education and some strategies to consider when we're in a webinar, and then to have questions. I'm conscious that we're a small group, so at any time that you want to ask a question, and Mary, on your end, if you want to ask it through the mic, maybe you'll just text me. I've both of your microphones muted. And again, from a tactic point of view or a strategy, it's always good in webinars to mute the mics when you're presenting, because what happens is that the microphones pick up background noise, and it can become really hard to hear for people on a webinar if all the mics are open. For instance, last week we had a webinar with the De Bono Foundation, and towards the end of that session we opened the mics, and it was a bit of a free-for-all. There was quite a lot of noise. So I suppose that's just something that we all need to watch. Okay, so without further ado, I suppose just a question to you both. Have either of you participated in a webinar before? And if you have, again, you might just text in and just tell me what it was and what the topic was. Actually, Mary, I'm going to open your mic, and you might just tell me your situation. Mary?
No, I just decided to have... Hello, can you hear me?
I can, loud and clear.
Yeah, I just decided to have a look and see what it's all about. I've never done one before, so I'm interested in it. That's
grand. And just tell me a little bit, and maybe Nora Ann can do the same when she's typing in. Just tell me a little bit where you are and where, what your experience, how you might use this, or how you think you might use it, if you don't mind.
I'm teaching in the further education sector, and there are times that maybe I'm not around, or if there's something happening in the evening, that it would be nice to, just get the group together. I teach in the disability area mainly this year, disability subjects. So it would be nice to kind of get together and say, what's happened, or, we could have a chat for 15 minutes. I just thought it would be interesting just to see if it would work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think it would work in a situation like that, and this product that we're using this evening, GoToMeeting, is ideal for that. Where the quality of the sound is good. We'll come to some of the things that we could and should do when we're doing these things. But it definitely saves people coming out on a dirty evening like this evening, where I'm out in Kildare and there's snow, and, well, it's not sticking, but it's doing its best, and all those things. So, Mary, that's great.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm sure you're glad you don't have to be out either.
I'm very glad, because it's not very nice out there tonight now either, yeah.
No bother. So, yeah, actually, I'm going to leave your mic open, because Nora Ann doesn't have a mic, so I'm going to break my first rule already, and the fact that there's only 3 of us, I'm going to leave your mic open, okay? So Nora Ann has typed, no bother. Noran, yeah, she has. I think it was about blended learning. She's an ICT teacher and just open to maybe new ideas for improving my teaching, and she has a master's in learning technologies. Excellent. So you probably should be giving this tonight, not me, but anyway, here goes. So I suppose I just want to kind of locate this in a context. I want to locate this in a context that the use of the webinars, they're located within a long history in education of learning at a distance. And I think it's worth, in the current era, there's a lot of hype about these kind of events, and, people are saying, oh, are you doing webinars, or are you on a webinar, and you nearly feel inferior if you haven't been on a webinar. No. I mean, this is learning at a distance. It's the internet is the big game changer here. And I mean, we've been learning at a distance through correspondence courses for well over 100 years. And the first online course, was done about, I think, if memory serves me right, about 20 years ago when the web started. So it is relatively new, but we have been learning at a distance for a while. And this technology that we have here is not actually, was never actually designed for education. It was designed for business. And like lots of tools in education, we've actually adapted it for ourselves. Now I just see that we have another attendee has joined us, Dermot, and I might just ask Dermot to introduce himself and say where he's coming from this evening and what he hopes to get from tonight. Hello, Dermot. Can you hear me? Hello. If you don't have a microphone or a headset, Dermot, you might just text in at the bottom. There's a chat box down in the bottom right, and we've just introduced ourselves. There's a small crew of us on this evening. There's Mary and there's Nora Ann, as you'll see from the attendee list, and you're very welcome. So if you want to text in the bottom, that's perfectly fine. So that's the first point. This is not something that is brand new. The internet and learning, the elements of learning online. So again, just a little bit of background about myself, which I should have probably given to you up at the beginning. I work for my own company with my colleague John Hurley. It's called H2 Learning, H for Hallissy, H for Hurley. And and we work in the space of technology and teaching, learning and assessment. We work on various projects and with various organisations. One of those actually is the City of Dublin ETB, and that's why Miriam asked me to give this talk tonight. One of the clients that we have in H2 is Hibernia College, and for a number of years, 3 years, I directed their online masters of arts in teaching and learning. So it was a completely online program, and I suppose it was when I was with Hibernia that I got involved and got very interested in the whole area of online learning myself. Prior to that, I had been more of a participant in it, but since that time, we've got much more involved in online learning, and with some colleagues out in St. Pat's, we also run summer courses for teachers called through the TeachNet program. So we do quite a bit in it. So I suppose there are 3 elements that we should think about when we're thinking about learning online. The first bit is the piece that everybody talks a lot about, and that is the content piece. And that can be documents, it can be web pages, it can be PowerPoint slides, and a lot of effort goes in to prepare that. Then on coming down clockwise, we have the forums, or sometimes that's referred to as the asynchronous, and that is where people post their reflections online, either before an event, but typically after an event. So when they've interacted with the content, there's usually some questions asked, and people are given an opportunity to participate in a discussion, in an online discussion. So that is something that is very common in online learning. And then the third piece is the part that we're going to talk about tonight. I have it titled here SCMC. So that stands for Synchronous Computer Mediated Conferencing. It's basically a live event, and when that happens, you have real-time interaction like we're having tonight. I can talk to you, those of you that have microphones, and I can text you, those that don't. The advantage of the synchronous, when you have a headset over the asynchronous, which is the forum, and sometimes you can have live chat online using text or typing only. The biggest problem there is that the person that is participating as a student or as a learner, they have to have good typing skills. So the beauty of having a microphone is that you can speak, and that's quite a powerful, because Mary there earlier when she spoke, she didn't have to type it, she didn't have to think what she was going to say, so it's much more instant. Now, I suppose tools of the trade, and I just put this in earlier tonight, one of the big tools I think that's most important here is a headset. I'm using one this evening that has a microphone. I know Mary, when I saw her earlier, she has the same. You need a device. It can be a computer, it can be a laptop, it can be a tablet, it can be a phone, and of course you need the internet. So I mean, they're the three main things you want. If you're going to do this, and and if some of you are thinking of using it, you might just, again, I see we've been joined by Suzanne. You're very welcome. Suzanne, if you want to just type in who you are and where you're coming from this evening in the chat box down on the bottom right, you're more than welcome. And also, if you've been on a webinar before, we'd love to hear from you. If you're going to do these with your students, or you're going to participate in them more often, I would urge you to go and get a headset, because it makes life so much easier. You don't need it all the time, but it does block out the background noise, and it helps with the audio. Audio is really, really important on a webinar. I was on a webinar last week that was organised by the Teaching and Learning Forum. It was for literacy in adult education, and the sound was dreadful, and we had to call it off. So, audio, yeah, and hopefully they're going to redo it. And I was talking to somebody else who was on it, and it was, the sound was breaking, it was delayed, and that just doesn't work. So, okay, so now for the next few minutes, for the next 10 or 15 minutes, I'm going to give you just some material, some jargon busting. So synchronous learning is live, and it's real time, and it's usually scheduled. So like you did tonight, you got an email, you were told this event was on, there's facilitated instruction, that's supposedly me, and there's a learning-oriented interaction. So you're here to learn, and the focus of the webinar and the synchronous event is on learning about webinars tonight. So that's just a definition. And now, that's too quick there. So rather than me doing a talk through, I'm going to attempt something funny happening here. Now, okay, I had a video there that I was going to play, but it's decided not to work for me. I think the system has realised that it's probably on a bandwidth issue. So I'm going to leave it out, and I'm just going to talk to you about the webinar. I suppose the big thing is that we're all coming in this evening from different places around the country. We could even be coming in from around the world, and we're able to connect at the same time. Some of you that are not on live with us can connect later on. And what I will do is, when we're following up with the recording of the webinar, I'll actually just pop in the URL for that video that I was going to play. So webinars allow a group of people to come online together at the same time. They're connected over the internet, and usually the person on one end makes the presentation and the others can interact. So that's in a nutshell what it is. Suzanne says, hi Michael, from Pearse College, specialising in communications, ESL computer skills, taking part in both the De Bono webinars, and I'm interested in the flipped classroom as teaching strategy. Very good, Suzanne, and you're very welcome. So, and the flipped classroom idea is that you kind of give the students work to do in advance, and then when they come into class, they are ready to engage more in discussion. So, yeah, good. And if you have a microphone, let me know, Suzanne. And if you have, then we can open up your mic as well, because we have a small crew here this evening. So, I suppose it is giving us new opportunities. It's that it gives us access to people. So if we didn't have this happening this evening, we would have to come out of our homes, to get access to other people that are interested in topics like ourselves. We'd have to access lecturers and, a knowledge expert. So last week it was a knowledge expert from the De Bono Foundation. It allows multiple people to interact and share ideas. And if we have more than one microphone tonight, you can actually talk to each other and share your ideas, share experiences, and that, of course, is hugely important. I mean, this whole technology is facilitating learning through discussion, and it's learning, it's very much based on our voices, hence the audio piece. I suppose the other thing is that it's a hands-on tool which learners can react to presented concepts. So as I'm speaking here, you have a chat button there, you have a chat box on the screen, and you can react. You can say, well, I didn't find that, or yes, I did, or if you have questions, or Mary there, her mic is open, she can even speak to me directly and say, well, I didn't find that, or whatever. So that is the way. Now, typically, in a webinar, we would use a thing called emoticons, which I'll show you in a second, and actually in that situation I would mute all your mics, and Mary, if she wanted to speak, I would ask her to raise her hand. But that's just one slight difference. So I suppose this idea of learning through discussion, and I myself think this is one of the biggest pluses of the webinar. Because if you can remember that slide a couple of slides back, I can present you with lots of content. You can go on YouTube. You can listen to all the videos in the world that you want to. But really, if you want to know if somebody's understood it, I suppose to give them a chance to articulate it in their own words, that's when you really get a sense of what they really got it. And I like this quote from Diana Laurie-Laird in the Institute of Education, who has written on this. She says, I can listen and follow, but that does not mean I have understood it securely as an idea I can generate myself. So when you're using this yourselves in a learning setting, you can actually get your learners to discuss and to chat. And there are strategies on how you can make it safe for them, that they don't feel intimidated. When I was on the Hibernia program, some of the tutors used to refer to a strategy called the click-in strategy. And that's a bit like in a classroom setting where I say to you, Mary, what did you think of that? And you're there going, oh God, what am I going to say? You can do that, and many students actually, didn't find that as off-putting as they would have had in a face-to-face classroom. However, strategies where you put people in groups and you give them a name and as a team name, and then there's one person in the group who speaks back on behalf of the group, much more successful. Okay, so a little bit about the tools, right? As you know, you are on a GoToMeeting webinar here tonight. I've just given you, just again for those of you who are interested, there are a wide range of products here. There's Blackboard Collaborate, that's what I use when I teach with Hibernia College. There's Adobe Connect, I was using it last week on a class I did with CIT, Cork Institute of Technology, and then there's the GoToMeeting one, which we have down here. You have to pay for those. However, there are free ones, and these are two that are very, very popular in education. There is Link, which is on the Microsoft side, and we have Google Hangouts on the Google side. Have any of you used any of those? Again, if you just want to text in yes or no, that would be great. So, what are the functionalities that you would have in a webinar? No, says Nora Ann. Yeah, and I think based on what people have been saying that many of you haven't. Okay, but just when you hear those words coming up and you hear the names of those products over the next while, then you'll know, oh yeah, they're talking webinars, right? So, it's functionality in a webinar software. Slides. I'm using slides here tonight. I mean, Mary hasn't used it either. So, we all would die without our slides. They keep us honest, as I say. Unfortunately, in some webinars, we can get lost in the slides and forget that there's a group of people listening to us. So that's why I'm deliberately giving you opportunities there to come in on the texting side, so that I know that you can hear me, that I know that that there's somebody on the other end, and I'm here in a room on my own this evening, and I could be talking into the darkness. So there is somebody out there, and we need to, when you're hosting a webinar, you always need to keep that in mind. There are controls about the volume. There's controls about who you can give speaking rights to, like I have here tonight. Suzanne, no, but I've heard from other teachers who have used Adobe Connect with success. Yeah. Again, my own advice to you there, Suzanne, is I think all of the products, I've used most of them at this stage, they all are very good. It's more about how you use them and some of the strategies there, I think. They're all becoming much more user-friendly, I suppose is the word, and they can, when they're used well, they really can bring in a whole new experience for the learner. Now, up in the top right here, there's one called Hands Up. Now, we don't have it on this particular application this evening, but that works really well when you have a large group. When you have a large group, you can ask if they have questions to raise their hand, and then you give them speaking rights. This evening, I'm giving speaking rights to whoever wants them because we're so small. Then we can do very simple little checks like, can you all hear me? Yes, no.
Yes.
And, yeah, good. It's important to have live participation, Mary. And then we have the emoticons. Now, these emoticons down the bottom. When I started in this game, somebody said to me, oh, these things, why do I need these? These are actually fantastic when they're used well. Because again, like that, you can ask everybody, can you all hear me? And I would see beside each of you there, and the three of you would appear a happy face. Just give me a happy face, you can hear me, etc. Unfortunately, on the GoToMeeting one we have tonight, they don't have that. But that's all right. We can get around it. Now, some ways to use webinars. So they're just some of the introductory bits. I mean, the biggest thing is it allows you to connect live at a distance, and it allows you to interact and bring in those guest lectures. I mean, last week we had the De Bono Foundation. We had Nigel, who was on he was dialing in from his home in England. We had people from all over Ireland on this webinar. Again, it was facilitated by Miriam and the Further Education Support Service, and it can be archived and it can be replayed. That is hugely significant. And I know that some people this evening are unable to attend, but they will be able to come and listen back to this at another time. So in terms of the kinds of things you can do with it, you can show PowerPoint, you can show video and audio, you can show web pages, documents. I have used it on the Hibernia side, where we have brought up a research paper that we might be talking about. I can even highlight the pieces. We can get feedback on it. If you were having a discussion with your learners, it could be very focused on a particular assignment that they have. It could be a project they were thinking of doing. It could be, you could even just have a meeting, and you could have the whiteboard section where you just do simple brainstorming and much more. Now, I'm just going to stop there for a second. Mary, anything there on that list that you think you might be able to use with your learners?
All of the above. I'd love an interactive whiteboard. Don't have one. We have one in the school, but I don't have access to it. Certainly if I was doing a webinar, I could probably do it from there.
Yes. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, webinars is the interactive whiteboard tool. Now again, it's not inbuilt into this GoToMeeting product, but it is in the Adobe Connect, and it's in Blackboard, and it's in Link. So they're, and depending on what device you have, and if you're fairly nifty with the typing, you can type away as people are giving you ideas, and you can save them and you can archive them. Suzanne,
sorry, can I just ask you about Moodle? You haven't mentioned Moodle, you've mentioned Blackboard. Do we have access to that in Moodle as well, do you know?
Good question. Okay. And just before I get there, Suzanne, I'm presuming you don't have a mic. Let me just check before I go any further. Hi, Suzanne. Do you have a mic?
Oh, yeah. Hello. Can you hear me?
Oh, I can. You have a mic. Yeah. That's great. So
okay.
I might come to you for a reaction in a second as well, before I answer that question from Mary. But sorry, I had muted the mics earlier, and when everybody comes in, they're automatically muted. So now you can contribute as well. Okay.
Excellent.
So Mary asked me the question, Moodle. So Moodle is a learning management system, an LMS, and unfortunately, this whole space is dominated by jargon. Moodle is really a piece of software that allows us to store material, documents, and it does allow us to work jointly on documents, etc. But it's not a live. It doesn't allow us to meet like this, Mary. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. So what you might do is, you might have a course, and if you remember my slide earlier of the content, the content would reside in Moodle, and we would have the live discussions here.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, no, I just wondered because we use Moodle in our college, and it's used across the ETBs, but
Absolutely.
That's fine.
So I would say that, yes, and Moodle is great. I mean, we use Moodle in Hibernia as well. And Moodle, if you think of those, think of like the old sections, or that we still have them, the triangles of cheese. So those three triangles, there are three parts to learning online. There's content, because we can't have meaningful interaction until we have something to discuss. So your content is stored in Moodle, and also on Moodle you can actually have a forum, but the one thing that Moodle cannot do is have a live interaction, and that's where your webinar software would come in. So it would be very simple for the ETB to, or for you yourself, to arrange to use one of the tools that I mentioned. You could use one of the free ones, either the link, which is the Microsoft, or Google Hangouts, and you could have a live session with your learners on some aspect of the course. Okay?
Okay. Yep, fine.
Suzanne, any reaction to the content and how you might use it? I know in your text comments there you have some ideas already.
No, I think it'd be really good for PowerPoint slides and to talk the students through maybe the day before a class, so then we could work on the task in class. And I think recording it is great, because I could then put the recording on Moodle for them to access. That would be a possibility, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And now I can see where you're thinking of coming from this. Yes, you could. So I think, yeah, they're both really doable and they're great ideas. And it does, sometimes the PowerPoint, there are a couple of ways you can do the PowerPoint there. You could record your own audio over it. But by having the PowerPoint, that can be a bit stilted sometimes. But, when you do it live and you can talk through it and they have questions or whatever, you can do that in advance. And then when you meet them face to face, you can do action stuff. And I think that's a really good idea. So if there's any other ideas and comments that people have, just, don't be afraid to stop me as we're going through. So I just want to put it in a learning context or a teaching context. I suppose there are a couple of ways of using this technology. And again, I reiterate, it was not built for education. This was built for business people to have meetings at a distance. And like everything in education, we borrowed it and we said, we can use this. Now, Nora Ann has also typed into us and texted in and said, I can see it being more useful in terms of meetings with colleagues or maybe guest lecturers. Might be a bit tricky to use effectively within our current structures. That's fine, yes. And, there again, the tool, as I said, was designed for meetings, but it has a wide use. And sometimes we need to maybe start, you might start with just organizing a guest speaker to come in, and then you might move on to other things. When it's used for instruction, it's very much used in that one-to-many way. So you can lecture to many people. This is the way it was used last week with the De Bono lectures. We had an expert in De Bono, and he lectured to us all. He spoke to us. It was really good. He controlled the time and the pace. He chose the resources and the inputs and the output tasks. So that was last week. But you don't always have to use it like that. You can use it to create knowledge. You can use it for knowledge construction. So here you can have people on their own, or you can work in pairs or in groups. And for example, I'm not going to read all of these, but you could do tasks. So for example, in the case that Suzanne had mentioned there, you might have them working as teams in your class anyway. And when you move them online, they can continue to work in those teams. And if you were giving them something to do, some of the software packages have like Adobe and Link and those, they allow you to do breakout groups. So you could say, well, Michael, your team, I want you to go away for 5 minutes. I want you to discuss that slide or that idea, that concept, whatever it is, and then I want you to feedback. And time management in this is critical. As I'm speaking to you here, I'm watching the clock all the time because we're going to be out of here before 8:30. So time is one thing you have to be very conscious of, but then you cut the microphones and you get them back, and they actually develop really good. If they get used to doing that, they become very adept at giving you good answers quickly when they come back, reporting back. And then, as you've said in the way you propose to use it, Suzanne, you can build on that then when they come in to meet you the following day. So, there's multiple uses. Okay. I don't want you to think that, there is just one way to use this technology. It can be used in multiple ways. Now, one of the questions that some people ask is, when you're on these live sessions is, are they engaged during the session? What are the people on the other end doing? Now, tonight, it's not an issue because I have such a nice group, small group, and we're actually chatting. It's more of a discussion. But some people worry that they could be doing other things. Now, I don't lose sleep over that, but that is a concern that some people have. I suppose ways to get people, if you were thinking of using it from a learning point of view, this is what some of the strategies that people have used in other situations. You could have learning contracts. You might have those already. I think discussion here has great opportunities for discussion. The lecture, and Nora Ann was saying that, the guest speaker, that works really, really well. Self-directed learning, I'm sure that's why you're here tonight. You're interested. Mentorship, I don't really know what that is, but anyway. Small group work, projects, collaborative learning, case studies, and forums. I mean, I think they're quite... most of those on that right side are ways that I would use it, particularly the small groups, the projects, the collaborative learning. And I think what's there is that it needs to be focused, and that if any of us were hosting a webinar when we're using it like this, either Dermot, Mary, Nora Ann, or Suzanne or I, our job then is to make sure that we have a structure, that we would have a task ready, and that we would give the learners clear instructions as to what we want them to do. Okay, so that's using it in a very formal way for learning, and on one side it's the lecture where you're speaking one-to-many, you're bringing in the lecturer, etc., etc. Then there is the second way, which is a more collaborative, social constructivist approach to learning. And then there is a whole other way of using it. And again, at the beginning, Mary was chatting to me, and she was saying about having unplanned chats and things like that with learners. You can also use this with your colleagues, but unplanned. You can say, listen, I might just chat to you about that, and we can do it maybe at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock or whatever. So it does work like that. It can actually support lively in-class discussions. But again, that takes a little bit of time. There are some strategies that you would use, no more than if you were trying to do it in a face-to-face classroom, but it can work for that. A really nice one is student-led presentations or performances. And I suppose my own research in this area, which was on online learning, was around this very question. Students on the Hibernia Masters actually have to make a presentation on their thesis in advance of their final submission, and they do it online, very much like we're meeting here this evening. It works really well for that, so for projects. Study groups, teams, committee gatherings, it works for that. So if some of the students, and I'm not familiar with your situations, but if students were working on a project together, they could use this as well. And I mean, when I put up the free options there, I could also have put in something like Skype in here as well, because that works as well, because it has many of the features of these webinar tools. So this whole yes.
Do all the programs allow you to record the session?
No, sorry, I'm drinking tea here now as I'm talking to you, saving my voice. No, they don't. That is the problem. Yeah. Now, good question, Suzanne. They don't allow you to record and say, for example, in Skype, if I was doing it using the Microsoft, I'd use Link because it's designed more for this purpose. And I'm not sure where you are, but a lot of ETBs have a license to use Office. And with that, you can record them. And I used it last week in a meeting that there was 10 educators and they were from all over the world. And just like the De Bono lecture, we were able to record it, and it syncs the slides with the audio, and that's really useful.
Brilliant. That's really good, because a lot of the students, I teach teamwork as well, and any kind of like team meetings that they have, we usually record them in class, but they could do this in their spare time, and it could be recorded, and it could show that they've held meetings for assessment purposes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, Nora Ann has texted in, could you use Wink or some other programs like that, separately record your and then post it? I must confess, I don't know what Wink is, Nora Ann, so sorry about that. I don't
Michael,
know.
Can you hear me now?
I can, Dermot.
Yeah, okay, great. Sorry about that. No, one of the kids had swiped the headphone, so I set it up on my mobile device, right, so I'm finally can talk.
Well, you're very
now,
welcome.
Right? Okay, thanks, yeah. Hello to the rest of you. I know everyone else there, right?
Great.
Okay, yeah, I think it would be great from what I'm trying to do, support teachers to learn Moodle. And,
oh, yes.
Just doing some technical stuff, trying to sort issues and problems instead of having to go around to centres and that. And I suppose for planning, it would be great too, when you're 2 or 3 teachers coming together to deliver a session to another group. I think it would be particularly useful for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that, yeah. Okay, right. Thanks anyway.
No, Dermot, no, I think that's great. Sorry, there's one other thing that you need to become aware of with this is there is a time lag, and one of the things I need to learn on my side is to stop talking because it doesn't happen instantly. But no, all those points you made are I think, you see, but the point I was just trying to make there with those previous couple of slides is that this tool can be used for all those things you described. I think, no, Mary, we can't hear it, so that just shows the quality of the sound there. As long as it has a focus, Dermot, and people kind of know what they're coming on for, then it works. I think, sometimes people use these tools and they say we'll meet online, and everybody says yeah we'll do that, and then they come on but they don't have a focus and they get a bit disillusioned. Yeah, but
I work in the campus where there's 3 different centres, and you have your management meetings and you spend all the time travelling, so you could just have short meetings and do that.
Yes,
which would make a lot of sense.
Yes,
through a webinar or a video conference.
Absolutely. Now, I should have said at the beginning here, I've my Surface connected here to a large screen, so my camera on my tablet is turned off. We could, Mary, when we started off, had her camera on, but if you had a small meeting, and up to 10 people, you could have the cameras on like a webinar, and then we could actually have the visual cues. We can do that as well. So that's another option. I tend to turn them off when I have larger groups because it impacts on the broadband, or it can. Okay, so Nora Ann there, sorry, you had texted in when I asked about Wink. I used Wink to create video of how, for an IT course, could add audio. It was not great, picked it up. Okay, grand, yeah. So look, it could, but I'm not sure. I would say probably not.
I don't think it would be as efficient as what we're using now. I've used it myself,
okay.
And it took quite a while to do the audio on it.
Perfect.
You had to be really careful, so I wouldn't consider Wink now. I'd say that's out of date.
Grand. Yeah, look, you've made a very important point here, and it goes back to something that some of you have alluded to. This works, and the sound here is very good this evening. And even though there's a little bit of a delay, and we'll have all that captured, that makes life easier. And when we're finished here, all I have to do is hit stop recording, and it will automatically create a file for me. So ease of use, etc., is very important for all of you. Now, going back to if you were going to use this with a group of people, and I've tried myself tonight to implement some of these strategies, but this is from Finkelstein, who I gave there in an earlier slide. And he has a lovely little analogy. It's the analogy of the dinner party. And then the first thing you do is you prepare for their arrival. So like I knew I was doing this webinar, I put together some resources in advance, and that, we were ready and we could just focus then on chatting and collaborating tonight. I wasn't worrying about what I was going to speak about because I'd done. Welcoming people warmly. When we started here this evening, I got you all to introduce yourselves, and, people by name. You talk to people by the name. You make them feel at home. Most times people, when they're using this for the first time, they find it quite daunting, actually. I don't know, has that been an experience for those of you out there? I'll give you a minute now, a moment to come in on that. But it can be. And I remember one time when I was in Hibernia, one of my colleagues, she was a very experienced teacher in a face-to-face setting, but she really was struggling with speaking into the dark. As she used to say to me, Michael, I was scared, So I know you're on the other side of it, but how would you describe the experience, Mary, from your side, being a participant?
I don't mind it, no. I'd be quite open to this kind of thing anyway, so yeah. I wouldn't find it, I wouldn't find that at all, no. Yeah. I'm quite enjoying it.
Good. Suzanne?
Yeah, I kind of like it because I don't have to travel. I can stay at home. I don't have to get a babysitter, so it's quite good from that aspect.
Yeah. And Dermot?
Yeah, once I got it set up, I'm fine. Yeah, I think it's interesting. Yeah.
Absolutely. So look, I mean, it works, and I think it's only about getting your mind around it. There's no magic here. I mean, a lot of the strategies that you're all using in your day-to-day, in your classrooms, you're actually going to have to use here as well. I mean, one of the people who participated, great, Noran, nice, small, friendly group, yes, absolutely, and that's the way it should be. But sometimes people will come into these events, and particularly if you're using it as a meeting space, just be aware that not everybody will be like all of you that are, willing to give it a chance, and some of them will feel a little bit, their confidence, they mightn't be that confident about it, so just be aware of that. And I suppose you saw I was doing that during the evening. Frequently assess the mood of the room. In fact, check that people are okay. Are they finding it of interest? Can they hear me? All of those kind of things. Have more food for thought than you need. So, I mean, I suppose you always need to make sure that you have enough stuff to kind of carry the session. However, I think sometimes we can overdo this. And I remember in my Hibernia days, the very first time I ever did a webinar, I came off absolutely exhausted because I had spoken at the speed of knots for 1 hour, and, just that's not what these things are about. I'll come to it in a minute, some of the tactics we can use in this, but, you need to have enough material, of course, but don't feel that you have to carry it all yourself. Try and make everyone feel included. Give people opportunities to interact. Refer to their comments made by people by name. You'll notice there I'm trying. It's easy tonight because of a smaller group, but sometimes when you have a larger group, you might have a colleague with you or somebody, and they would actually pick out some of the comments that are coming in. But I would encourage, when you're using these tools, I would assume that everybody doesn't know how to use the system, and I would say, now, if you want to interact with me, give the ground rules. You can interact via the text, like we're doing through the chat in the bottom right, or you can just speak in the microphone, however you're going to do it. But give people clear ground rules. Don't assume that they're going to know what to do. Facilitate connections and conversations, but don't dominate every discussion. So your role, if it's a meeting, is very much just to facilitate, and you all do that in your daily lives. So that's just to remember to do that here. Offer the guests something to take away with the transcript, or in this case, you're going to get the recording, and you'll have my slides. So that's what you'll have to take away with you. And then it's always very important to know when to say goodnight, People have to get back to their lives. So, monitor how it's going. And I always found with these sessions that, an hour of good, lively interaction is far better than somebody doing it for an hour and a half, and it drags. I know in other institutions, one institution I've done some work with, if they were doing webinars that were 2 hours long, too much. I think an hour is perfect, and if you're doing it for shorter sessions, 15, 20-minute, meetings or catch-ups, that's fine. Or if you're doing something else, it depends on the purpose, but just be careful on the time. So that's just some things to keep in mind. The practical stuff, and you've seen that here tonight, and I commend Dermot for his resilience to go off and come in on to the session on a tablet as opposed to using headphones. Headphones and mics, I think, as I said earlier, are really important. You've heard me again, I'm repeating myself here, but, acknowledge they can hear you, have the clear ground rules. This is what we're going to do, this is what I'll be doing, and this is what I expect from you. So that you're encouraging, in this case, tonight, I wanted you to interact. I've left the mics open, and you can come in and out. We're just having a chat. So that's very important. Sometimes you'll notice that people will start chatting on the chat and they're sending it to everybody and the world, and sometimes in a case like that I might just type back to the person and say, good evening, Dermot, how are you? Listen, just be aware we can all see your comments, so maybe if you want to comment to a friend directly you can do that, because they may not have used it before. And I've seen, I had an American lady on a few years ago, she was doing a webinar on online schooling, and she said she never saw anything like the amount of discussion, not related to the event that was taking place in the chat forum. But anyway, that was it. I suppose getting people to interact. Now, I don't have it here tonight, but you could have a poll feature. When I asked you earlier, how many of you have been on a webinar before? Just click yes or no. That works. It's low-level interaction, but it gets people going. The text, like we've been using, and the microphone. And then the shy students. Some people are quiet, and they prefer to remain quiet. And as I said, you can click in on them, but I find that there are better ways to do that. Get them to text in. They can be, those people may be as engaged, are more engaged than others because they're listening, so just be aware of that.
Michael?
Yes.
Can I ask a quick question just in relation to interaction? Is there any way to do kind of quizzes on it?
There is.
Kahoot in the classroom, which is great, and it would be brilliant to assess learning at the end of a webinar just to see how much they've picked up and how much they focus on again. Yeah.
No, you can do simple ones, Suzanne. So I would imagine, say I had a PowerPoint up here in front of me, and you had a question on it. You can do things like yes, no.
Okay.
You might
True,
say,
false.
Sorry?
True or false?
True or false.
Okay.
From an assessment point of view, you could also do even things like, if they're in teams, you could get them to give their response to a particular question, and you could even give them a mark on it. Now that would be taking it a bit further, but if you wanted immediate feedback, yes, no, true, false, would work perfectly well. Or you could do multiple choice. You could have 3 or 4 options, and you could say individually, now I want each person to just hit the response. Now what it'll give you is, it won't come up Michael Hallissy no when it should have been a yes, but what it will give you is, it will give you an indication as to how many of them got it and didn't get it, and then you might have to do more on it the following day in the class.
Okay, that's brilliant.
Yeah. Okay. So,
Michael,
yes.
just technical things. When this is over, can I go back in and look at the slides?
You can. You can.
I can go back into the meeting,
Yeah, we'll send them to you tomorrow. It outputs it. When this is finished, Dermot, a message will come up on my screen. Do I want to convert it? And I can convert it into a WAV file or an MP4.
Okay. And to run a meeting.
Yes.
We can do it with this software. Do we have to pay to be able to run the meeting? Or
Yeah. So good question. And this was one of the things I was covering earlier on, that there are two camps here. Of course, like everything in life, the stuff that the pay for ones like this one. Actually, this is specifically for meetings, right? But we can use it for webinars. This company is owned by Citrix, and they have two products called GoToMeeting and GoToWebinar. We use this mainly for meetings, and we can also use it for webinars. But the two, I suppose, big players at the moment are Adobe and Blackboard. They're the two big ones, and you pay for those, and they're quite expensive. But on the free side, the ones that are most commonly used in education are Link, which is Microsoft, and Google Hangouts. And they're free.
Okay.
I don't know in the ETB what, I think you use Microsoft quite a lot, don't you?
I do a bit, yeah.
Yeah, so
I
mean
I haven't used it yet.
Yeah, but I mean, I can check, I'll be talking to Miriam tomorrow.
It appears we have access to Microsoft Office.
Yeah, well then if you have access to Microsoft Office, I think it would be worth then checking out Link. And if we were to do another one of these, we should do it specifically on Link, because that is the one that you would be using. And I was saying earlier, Link is part of Office. It's part of Office 2010, and it can do all and more than GoToMeeting. Actually, from a H2 point of view, we're going to move completely onto Link now. One of the things GoToMeeting can do is it can allow a person to come in on their phone, right? So you could dial in, and you can dial in from a local number. And Link, if you use the free version of Link, you don't get that facility. But for a couple of bob a month, we can get that facility. So we'd have everything that we have in GoToMeeting and a bit more. So I hope that answers your question, Dermot.
Okay, thanks, yeah.
Okay, so I'm nearly kind of done, but these are just a few last points that I just wanted to share with you, and I'm watching the clock here. I have 8 minutes. So, I suppose, again, it depends how you use it. If you're using this, I wouldn't recommend using this as a way to do lectures. If you're going to do that, and again, I know a colleague in another college who was doing that, and I said to him, look, if you have PowerPoint and you want to do an audio recording on PowerPoint, you can actually do that. And again, with Office 2010, there's an add-in called Mix, and you can actually add your own audio to your PowerPoint, and you can save it, put it up into Moodle, and it's there, it's recorded. If you are doing all the work on a webinar and there's no interaction, it's very boring for everybody else, and the students will fall asleep, and it's like that earlier slide I had of somebody on the webinar, but they're actually doing other things. And I always say to colleagues, unless there's interaction, why bother showing up? If Dermot wasn't able to ask that question there live there now, he could come back in tomorrow and listen back to this, and he can still do that. But keep remembering the live bit here, okay? Yeah. Again, some of my own research, when I looked at this and how it's being used, I found that a lot of the time they were being used for lectures. And as I said, I think there are better ways to do that. You can put the lectures up on Moodle, put the audio with the PowerPoint, and you can then come in and use this for the interaction piece. That's what needs to be at the heart of all this. I suppose the biggest thing for those of you, you're all on the participant end this evening, but in a short space of time, I hope we'll have a couple of you that will be in the presenter seat. And I suppose one of the things is silence. Now, thankfully here this evening, we've had no silence, but sometimes with your students, and it'd be interesting, Suzanne, if you try it, or Mary, or Dermot, or Nora-Ann, with your own students from a learning point of view, and those learners could be teachers, they don't have to be just students in the colleges. You might ask a question, and nobody answers. And what's your first response when there's no response?
Is there anybody there?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And I suppose I would say to you, learn to wait, because again earlier there I was speaking over Dermot, because there is a time lag, even with the best of connections. And with the students, you'll have to give. So there's an old, the idea of wait, W-A-I-T, time, is not a new idea. It's been there forever and a day. But in the online world, it is really important. Because as I say, going back to my own experience, and the first time I ever did this on the other end, when I was a speaker, or the presenter, I was absolutely terrified. And here is one of my colleagues, what she said when she did it. I'd absolutely no experience of it previously. The first time I put on those headphones and said hello or good evening, I was absolutely terrorized. Now, I must confess, these comments were made a few years back when webinars were really new, and it's great, I think, to participate on it as a learner yourself, because you're probably sitting there and going, oh, I would do it differently, I do this, and that's what I'd encourage. I think it's really important to have participated as a learner on these. And again, just to give you reassurance, this person taught at second level for many years, and she said, I was pleasantly surprised it all happened much easier than I thought. And so I think the strongest thing I found is that my teaching skills or if you like, my on-site classroom teaching skills, I was able to call on once I got over the first hurdle of actually doing this online. So all of those strategies that you have in your everyday work, they will come into play here. And my last few words before I leave it open to you for questions. I suppose just to say, this is a really new area in the field of online education. And like I said at the outset, we've had learning at a distance for well over 100 years through correspondence courses. This is the next wave of it. I think, I was reading something over the weekend, that's pointing out, we don't know enough about it, so I would really, really encourage you all that, to try it out. If you want help on it, and get back to Miriam on this, I would be more than helpful to talk to you one-on-one and help you to design activities or experiences that would hopefully work. And I would love to hear from what you did and how it went. We don't have enough research, we don't have enough practice on what people are doing and how they're doing it in this area. So, I suppose I also think that, the technology, while it's great, I would love if the technology would allow us to move things even further. So I think that's something that we have to keep in mind, that some of the things you might want it to do, it may not do. And my final word is really move at your own pace, try it, reflect, and move on. I think there's nothing will beat that. So that's for me. Any questions, comments before we finish?
Can I ask a question? Sorry.
You can, Mary. Yeah.
Suzanne, can you edit the audio afterwards before you pass it along to us?
No.
No.
You probably, that's fine. You know what, Mary, you probably could, but no, you wouldn't. No, it would be a nightmare scenario. Because what it does is, it's recording there now all the time, right? I know in Hibernia once upon a time, I did something happened and they had to do a bit of editing on it. It's a big job. Really, you want to just have the session, record it, and then it'll put it in a format that you can share, and that's really what you want.
Okay.
Were you thinking of a reason why you might want to do that?
Just if I got students to use it, they have to do an hour-long presentation for me for one of their modules, and I thought some of the students that are really nervous, they don't want to get up in front of the class, if they use this, because 2 or 3 of them can do this together, if they said anything that they didn't want to come out on the actual video, would they be able to delete it out? Would they be able to take it out?
Yeah.
Or would they have to be really careful what they said?
I think they'd have to be really careful what they said. And again, that goes back to the ground rules. But I mean, just like what you've talked about there, I think there's a multitude of ways you could use this for those students that are nervous. They could record themselves. Here's an example. You could say, right, you could have a practice go or whatever, I don't know how you do it, and you could get them to do their run through, record it, give them the ground rules, tell them, look, be very careful what you say, excuse me, and you're going to give a run through, and then you're going to give them some feedback afterwards. The other thing about the way it's played back afterwards, you can play it back on your phone, you could play it back on your tablet or whatever device you want to play it back on, and you could actually use it for formative assessment if you wanted to. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It was, yeah.
So I would,
it's caused major problems this year to get them to do it.
Right.
I just, as we were going through this, it was just hitting me.
Yeah.
This would be a nice way for them to maybe
and if you want,
make an attempt.
Absolutely.
You know?
And if you want help on that, maybe talk to Miriam and come back to me directly, and I'd be more than happy to help you on that. I think that would be a great way to do it. Sorry, Suzanne, we cut you off there.
Oh, I just wanted to ask, do you think this is where education is going in the future, and that maybe in 5 years' time we will be delivering our classes through webinars and maybe meeting the students maybe once a week, 3 or 4 times a month, with the emphasis of the ITs kind of bringing in blended learning? Do you think this is the way we might be going?
Well, I don't. I think the blended. No, I think the blended learning is the way it's going, I suppose is what I should say.
Okay.
Yeah. And you mentioned
it. This would be facilitated in blended learning, would it not?
Say that again.
Would this not be part of blended learning where they could learn online? You could teach them online and then meet up with them.
Absolutely. Well, I think what it's going to do. No, I suppose what I'm saying to you is, I think what it's doing is it's allowing us to I hate some of these words, but reinvent, reimagine, whatever, transform, whatever word you want to use. But it's allowing us to be more, and you seem to have a good grasp of it yourself. It's allowing us to make better use of our time. So if you spend, 45 minutes or an hour and a half or whatever time you have, delivering content, or, I read during the weekend, learning through acquisition, where you're feeding a lot of stuff. Now, I know in some of your courses that's not the case, but, you still have content to cover. So if you can do that through these tools and then use your face-to-face time more effectively for that kind of, group work, project work, where your role changes slightly, changes in a big way, that you're more of a facilitator than a deliverer of content, I think that is the biggest thing that's going to happen with these tools. And it is redefining what teaching will look like and what learning will look like for the learner, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess it's appealing to all learning styles as well. You have the audio and the visual and the kinesthetic then in the classroom.
Yeah, it is. I think it can. Again, I think we have to be careful. I think the tools are getting better. And I suppose that word that I used when we were going through there was this notion of design. I think if we design, and we're conscious that, this will appeal to some learners more than others, but it does tick a lot of the boxes. But if you design your learning activities and the interaction, you said it yourself, interaction, that the learners are engaged and involved, then we have a good chance of hitting them all. But there are certain things that this will not deal with. So, those of you who are teaching more hands-on subjects, I'll call them, this will not work for all elements of those kinds of subjects, but it will work for some. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Horses for courses. Okay. So, look, it's been my pleasure to have such a wonderful group on this evening. It's 20:33, so we've gone over by 3 minutes, so apologies for that. I hope you found it useful. As I said, there are my contact details on the slide. I would be really, really interested to hear from you if you have ideas on using it, because, as I said, there's a real need for examples on how this can be used, and the more we have and the more practice we capture and share, the better for everybody. So have a good evening, and it's been my pleasure to speak with you this evening.
That's great.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Michael.
Bye-bye.